Yeah, so no slides as well, but I mean, like, this is something interesting that we kind of had to work with, and I think like it's important, especially if you are creating HTTP clients and you are making requests. One of the most important things that we noticed was that the defaults for timeouts on the HTTP client on Golang are not good. Like, you don't want to create an HTTP client without actually going there and defining a timeout for every single possible timeout that you have on the client. So you should, whenever you create an HTTP client on Golang, make sure like you're setting like the client timeout, you're setting the handshake timeout, you're getting all of the timeouts in place, because otherwise you will just have a client that never gives up. It's just going to hold on to the thread that it's running, and it's never going to give it up. So you want to make sure that there are timeouts defined for every single like field that you have on the HTTP client. So make sure you have all of them defined, and there's one special one that's not available in the standard library. I'm actually going to blog or write something about this, because I think like it's really important, especially if you're building something that's proxying requests. If you're building some kind of proxy and you have to like get a request in one place, create an HTTP client, and then forward it to something that's running on the background, this is going to bite you. Is that there is no limit on how many connections the HTTP client is going to make. So what's going to happen is that if you don't set the limit yourself, the dialer is just going to create connections and create connections and create connections until your machine runs out of file handles. So it's not, So it's going to happen. One really easy way to make something like this to happen is that you have like your Golang client is really fast, but then you're proxying something that's really slow on the back end. In our case, was a Ruby app. Like, it was really slow to answer requests. So what was happening was that sometimes, like during the day, like it's fine, like it's just sending a request. Sometimes it grows a little bit. Sometimes it just stays the same for a real long time. But then a lot of slow requests arrive. And when these slow requests arrive, what's going to happen is that it's going to get a lot of requests. And those requests that are pending because they take a long time to answer are the client is going to say, oh, I can just create another connection, right? So it creates another connection and then sends another slow request and then another slow request, and then eventually just the service just runs out of file handles, and we were like, what's going on? Why aren't we like running out of file handles? How do we configure this? And there's no actual way for you to configure this using the standard library. So what we did was that we wrote our own like dialer that is just going to like produce requests until it reaches the limit, and then it's just going to stop creating new connections. So it's just a wrapper around the actual like standard library dialer, and like the dialer on networking, like you might not have seen this if you haven't had to go like deep into Golang's like net package, but the dialer is the thing that creates a connection for you. It just creates a connection between the computers. It doesn't care about protocols, doesn't care about anything. It just creates a connection for you, and then like the other pieces of the library are going to use like this connection to make requests. So what we did was that you get a dialer. A dialer there is an actual kind of struct, but basically a dialer is something that that provides this function dial. This was the old one, and dial context, which is what we should all be using right now, because we all want to use context for everything. So you want to be using this one. And what we did was that when you're going to dial, we are going to check the amount of connections that we already have. And if we have gone over the limit, we will just try. We will like wait a little bit. And in most cases, we're waiting something like 10 seconds, because one of the services that we have is really, really slow. So we can just like give it up. So we just wait a little bit, it loops a little bit, and if it's able to create a connection, then we return to the connection. Otherwise, we're just going to say, hey man, I'm sorry, I can't create more connections, because otherwise we are just going to run out of file handles. So if you are using Golang's HTTP client, remember you have to set timeouts for everything, and you also have to look at your dialer, because you can't just continue to create connections, because your machine is going to run out of file handles, and when this happens, your process is just going to die, because it's just not going to be able to create more file handles. So if you're building something like a proxy, you should really worry about this kind of stuff, and please collect metrics about all the stuff that you do. So we collect metrics about how many connections we have, how long connections live, and how long we are waiting for, like the clients are waiting for connections to do. So you really want to collect all of this data, and you want to make sure that you understand how your services are behaving. Because you might have a service that's really fast, and you also might have a service that just takes forever because it's just trying to create too many connections. So it's really important to get data and get metrics about this kind of stuff. So that's it. Any questions?
What did you wind up setting them to? How did you configure them? What were the values you wind up using?
It depends on the service that's being backed on the other side. For the Rails app, I think we are, I think 200 connections or something like this is the limit, because like it's a lot of services running on the back end. But like for the other apps, the ones that are faster, we just have pretty small amount of connections.
Yeah.
So we just set a limit, and we have just given that we have been running this for a while now, we actually have data on how many connections are really needed. So we are trying to fine tune to just make sure like that the connections that we expect to have are the connections, the maximum amount of connections that we're going to have.
Do you have any place where we can see samples like that code?
I'm going to write a blog post about this. I'll post in the channel, and I'll have the actual code available, because this is really useful if you're like dealing with this kind of stuff.
Microservices.
Yes. If you're doing microservices and like making HTTP calls, you will really need to have something like this.
What about like I think I run into another issue, like reducing the connections. Like we have to read the entire buffer.
Yes, you have to read the entire buffer. Yes, this is really important. If you are like creating stuff, let me go. I have right here. This.
There you go. Yeah.
You've got to do this.
Yeah.
If you make a request and you want this connection to be reused, again, you have to look at the body and you have to read the body. Even if it doesn't matter, for us in this specific case, it's just a health checker. So I don't care what's coming back on the request, as long as it's 200, it's fine. But I still have to read the body of the request, because otherwise the Golang client is going to discard this connection and is not going to reuse it again. So what you want to do is that you want to look at the response body, you want to read the response body, like you don't have to read it to any special place, just read it to IO discard, and that's it. Like you just want to consume the buffer in there, then close the response body, and then just let it go. So you have to do these two pieces. You have to like discard and you have to close. This was also something that we forgot to do in one of our first versions, is that we forgot to close the bodies, and what was happening was that like the connection would just like live until it timed out. So it was pretty bad, and it was also like using a lot of file handles. So it's important, like read the buffer until the end and then close the body of the response that you're getting from the HTTP client. Any questions?
That's good.
Yeah.
I've seen this on my machine as well. I don't know if anybody's used Siege or like Apache Bench or anything like that. Those tools will be your friend, because that thing will just blow up in your face pretty fast.
Yeah, if you have an issue, it's definitely going to break.